Good morning, I'm Angelo Castro III.
I'm Angela, and we are the Castros.
We bring you the news.
And the views that make you think.
Sometimes we agree.
Sometimes we don't.
This is News and Views.
And here are today's headlines.
2 people, including a 5-year-old girl, are confirmed dead after an SUV rams into the passenger entrance of NAIA Terminal 1's departure area.
The Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines defends Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle following criticisms over alleged clerical sexual abuse.
And the Philippines records a suspected digital fraud rate more than double the global average.
The Philippine National Police is now on full alert status for the midterm elections.
First in the news, 2 people have been confirmed dead after an SUV rammed into the passenger entrance of NAIA Terminal 1's departure area on Sunday. Here's the report.
A 5-year-old girl was among the 2 fatalities after a sports utility vehicle or SUV rammed into the passenger entrance of NAIA Terminal 1's departure area on Sunday morning. The child was with her mother and grandfather, sending off her father, an overseas Filipino worker. The other fatality was a 28-year-old man who was scheduled to fly to Dubai for a business meeting. The remains of the 2 victims were brought to a funeral home in Pasay. Meanwhile, 4 others who sustained injuries were taken to San Juan de Dios Hospital. New NAIA Infracorp President Ramon Ang personally visited the terminal and promised to shoulder all expenses for the victims. Transportation Secretary Vince Dizon also conducted an inspection.
Review din namin ang CCTV. Nakita namin yung sasakyan na rumagasa. So right now, initially, mukha namang hindi pumunta dito yung driver para managasa. No, hindi intentional dahil nga nakita natin na meron talaga siyang hinatid na pasahero dito.
According to Dizon, the SUV driver is now in police custody and will undergo drug and sobriety testing. The Land Transportation Office has already suspended the driver's license. The driver claimed he panicked when a sedan suddenly passed in front of him, mistakenly stepping on the accelerator instead of the brakes. He will face charges of reckless imprudence, resulting in homicide, multiple physical injuries, and damage to property.
Meanwhile, the bus driver involved in the SETEX collision that left 10 people dead tested negative for illegal drugs. Despite this, mandatory drug testing is now required for all drivers of Solid North Transit. Here's the report.
The bus driver involved in a multi-vehicle collision at the Tarlac City Toll Plaza along SETEX on Thursday tested negative for drugs. Despite the negative result, Transportation Secretary Vince Dizon insisted that this was not enough. He emphasized the need to ensure that mandatory drug testing is strictly enforced for all Solid North Transit drivers. The Department of Transportation will collaborate with the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency to implement this measure.
Hindi pwede yung aayaw, hindi pwede. Hindi ka pwedeng umayaw kasi nagdadala ka ng pasahero eh.
The agency will also inspect the roadworthiness of the drivers, assessing their ability to drive safely and whether they comply with road standards. A memorandum from the DOTR states that drivers should rest after 6 hours of driving. The Tarlac City Police reported that the bus driver may have fallen asleep before the crash.
Para tayo naglolokohan eh. Hindi naman talaga tinetest ang roadworthiness eh. Ang problema sa Pilipinas, hindi naman yung batas at regulasyon madalas eh, yung enforcement eh. Kahit na may batas, kahit na may regulasyon, kung hindi naman yan ini-enforce, bagay wala lahat yan.
Dizon also visited the wake of the victims and vowed assistance to their families. It is expected that Solid North Transit will face hearings at the LTFRB on Wednesday. The company's more than 200 bus units were also suspended for no less than 30 days. The accident claimed the lives of 10 individuals and injured over 30 people.
And this last few days, senseless loss of life.
Yes.
Pero both instances kasi mukhang driver error ang nangyayari. So hindi natin alam kung ano yung lack of education ba in driving or is it simply lack of conditioning sa physical, di ba? Kasi isang bus driver, itong sa SETX, ang nangyari parang nakatulog daw.
Tulog siya.
Diba?
Negative naman siya sa
sa drugs. This one naman, may nagkaroon ng error. Supposedly, based sa video, nagkaroon ng error daw sa pagtapak ng accelerator. So in each instance, ito sa driver error.
Yeah.
So parang we have to look back. Ano ba ang kailangan natin gawin sa level pa lang ng testing ng license?
Exactly.
Oo.
Yeah, I agree with that. Kasi what I'm seeing here is parang wake-up call to din sa atin yung sunod-sunod ng mga aksidente na to, na to do our part as well as the government's part. To do our part, kapag tayo yung mga nagmamaneho, di ba, kung lasing tayo, huwag tayo magmaneho. Kung inaantok tayo, huwag tayo magmaneho. We check our vehicles as well. For the government's part, I agree with what you said. Yung pagbibigay ng lisensya pa lang, di ba, from the start, ayusin yun. Itigil na yung mga fixer at saka yung mga nagkakaroon ng mga, ano tawag dito, di ba, may mga medical exam yan, pero hindi naman talaga sa kanila nagagaling.
Little by little kasi nawawala naman yung fixer already. Meron pa rin. Pero ang nagiging problema kasi yung sheer volume of people applying for licenses, medyong parang tinatamad na minsan or nahihirapan ang mga taga-LTO to implement yung protocols na kailangan daanan mo para makakuha ng lisensya because ang daming tao para sa kanila gusto nila lang patakbuhin yung yung process. 'Di ba? So hindi talaga fulfill yung mga yung testing, 'di ba? Tapos sa SCTX bus driver naman, kailangan tignan din natin kung ano ba talaga ang protocol ng mga kumpanya with regards to kasi 6 hours.
Yung mga operators.
Oo, kasi the operators per bus kasi may nakataw ka dyan driver, may nakataw ka dyan conductor. Tapos sa bus number 8, naka-assign yung driver dyan for the month, kailangan 8 trips a day ka, di ba? So, kailangan i-review natin ano bang
Kasi
quota
there's a
system na to.
policy, there's an existing policy na dapat dalawa ang driver pag mahahaba yung trip. No? So, apparently, dito sa Solid North, they don't do that. So, etong si driver na isa, inantok na, sa haba siguro ng maneho niya, wala siyang kapalitan.
Pero,
so, di ba, makikita mo rin dito yung, yung accountability ng operators naman.
Ako hindi ako bus driver, pero yet I can experience yung pagod. Yung sa unang trip pa lang itong mga driver na to, they're required to have multiple round trips. Di ba, kunyari, pupunta ka kunyari ng Baguio, yung driver na sasakyan mo bandang hapon, nung 6 a.m. pa bumabiyahe yan. Di ba? After 2 round trips, siya papalitan. Ganun palang sistema. Mahirap
Pagod na yun
nakakapagod na talaga yun. Tapos number 2, ay condition ng bus, di ba?
How do we check it? Roadworthy ba yan, di ba? Pati sarili mo, importante talaga kung roadworthy ka Kaya nga tinitingnan natin dito yung accountability din ng mga tao na, di ba, may mga tao kasi na may sumusunod sa batas trapiko, sumusunod sila sa pagmamaneho nila, maingat, nagsi-seatbelt, etc. Tapos may mga pabaya na nadadamay sila. So tulad nito, di ba, yung talagang napakasakit, no? Yung bata na namatay dyan sa may naiya, na hinatid lang yung tatay galing dito sa atin dahil OFW, babalik na
saka yung isa,
pinagtatrabahuhan.
Businessman on the way to Dubai for a business meeting.
Oo. Nadadamay dahil sa
Nadadamay.
mga irresponsible drivers. Anyway.
All right, let's move on to other news. Preparations are underway at the Sistine Chapel for the upcoming conclave to elect the 267th Pope. The chimney has been set up to signal the election outcome with black smoke indicating that no decision has been made, and white smoke announcing the election's conclusion. On May 7, the 133 cardinal electors will begin their day with Mass at St. Peter's Basilica, praying for the Holy Spirit's guidance. They will then gather in the Pauline Chapel for prayers before proceeding to the Sistine Chapel to take an oath of secrecy and commitment. The first ballot will be cast on the evening of May 7, with the cardinal electors voting 4 times daily in the following days, twice in the morning and twice in the afternoon.
Meanwhile, the CBCP defends papal frontrunner Tagle over clerical sex abuse issues. Here's the report.
The Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, or CBCP, has issued a statement on clerical sexual abuse, defending Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle on the issue, days before the opening of a conclave to elect a new pope. This come after watchdog group BishopAccountability.org warned that Tagle and Italian Cardinal Pietro Parolin could not be relied on to protect children, with its co-director accusing the church in the Philippines of remaining in the Dark Ages. But the CBCP said Tagle no longer holds direct authority over any diocese in the Philippines since his appointment to a full-time position in the Roman Curia. It also noted the key role Tagle, who served as Archbishop of Manila between 2011 and 2019, had played in crafting pastoral guidelines on sexual abuse that were disseminated in 2003. Tagle is among the leading contenders for the papacy following Pope Francis's passing. Father Jello Parlan, one of deacons ordained by Tagle in 2022, shared some positive traits of the cardinal.
Very practical, very grounded no sa realities ng buhay natin.
Ang mabuting pastol, kaamuy niya yung tupa. So napakasimple ni Cardinal.
Father Parlan called on the public to pray for a peaceful conclave.
Siyempre, pinagdarasal natin ang yumaong Santo Papa. Higit sa lahat yung nangyayari pong conclave. At pati na rin po yung mga cardinal na nandoon para mas lalo silang ma-inspire para makapili po ng ating susunod na leader ng simbahan.
Okay,
Well, as
so
much as possible
ilang araw
kasi-
na lang conclave na, May 7.
Oh, as much as possible kasi we should not be talking about yung things like this that have been already talked about before. This was already clarified, but of course, ayoko maisipin na things about the church naman. But if you kasi watch Conclave, now we're not saying it's happening, but if you watch Conclave, there are things
Conclave the movie,
the movie, yung the Conclave the movie, may mga things na lobbyist, may mga lobbyists din for certain popes already. You have to remember, aside from being head of the church, you're also head of state for the Vatican.
Yeah.
And although in debt supposedly ang Vatican, in debt doesn't really mean walang pera. Madaming assets ang Vatican. They have a lot of gold reserves. They have all these artifacts. They have the paintings from the Sistine Chapel, which is a lot of money, di ba? Siyempre, the church will not sell that as much as possible. Pero madaming assets po. So very critical po ang magiging pope because yung direksyon po ng asset management and those who have interest sa asset nito, di ba, may importance din, may significance yan.
Exactly. So, yun nga yung sinasabi nila, it's either, di ba, traditional wing, which will
Yes.
push back dun sa traditional ways ng Catholic Church, or yung progressive wing, which is yung will maintain, di ba, yung sinimula ni Pope Francis. Ang hindi daw nilang napapansin dito ay may isa pang wing, may third wing, which is the current, they call it the moderate wing, which is, sabi nila, itong wing na to seeks to build bridges, no, between the two wings that I've mentioned earlier. Kumbaga parang dialogue-oriented approach. Yun yung nagkakaroon ng
Pero
usapin doon sa pagka nagkaroon sila ng conclave, o nag-start yung conclave.
Pero if you take a look at mga ginawa ng changes ni Pope Francis sa church, you take a look at, he's adhered to Vatican II. Vatican II is the second drafting parang constitution ng Vatican. Vatican II was also adhered to by Pope John Paul II. So when people say, yung mga anti-Pope Francis, not against him, but the way he governs it, hindi po siya talaga liberal. He may be liberal or he may be open to other religions coming in, but if you see his he's still very strict when it comes to yung mga rulings of the church, di ba? He doesn't want to change things, rock the boat, like women priests, women cardinals, and other things. He is, sabi, make no mistake, he's merely opening the doors and being kind and not judgmental.
Yeah. But he opened the doors also for the women sa mga administrative posts, sa church.
But that does not constitute liberalism in the church. That still means he's just being open to the idea. It's modern times.
Yeah.
People should be allowed to have their work.
Right.
Ang point lang dito lang is, there are three factions.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying kanina.
Tapos
there are three factions that they're trying to consolidate sa start ng conclave.
Ngayon,
And this is going to be, sinasabi nung nabasa ko, this is going to be daw the hardest conclave doon sa nakikita nila sa nangyayari ngayon, the way we are seeing it. Kasi nga maraming electorates, 133 compared dun sa 117. And hindi sila magkakakilala. Most of them kasi
Pero hindi.
may mga na-elect o na-appoint si Pope Francis na hindi usually na-elect sa isang
Dalawa lang
bansa
daw yan
na cardinals.
Dalawa lang daw yan. It's either the Pope gets elected via demographic faction or the Pope gets elected according to yung what faction he belongs to in terms of yung Vatican Council or yung mga laws ng church. So if you're going to go by the moderate, which is the middle, yung Carmelengo is one of the moderate, most moderate, and he's known as the best diplomatic pope a Pope, Cardinal, because siya daw ang marunong magdiplomasya on both sides.
Yeah.
Ito yung current
Yan yung
Carmelengo.
sinasabi nila
If
na
it were to be voted,
moderate wing.
if you're going to vote for a moderate wing, it's a Carmelengo. That should be the front runner. If you're voting daw to continue what the Pope is doing, then you're talking about Tagle. If you're going more liberal daw, you're talking about that South African Cardinal. So madaming ano to. Pope Francis was not even in the radar.
Yes.
Nung last,
Kaya nga di ba
ano,
sinasabi din sa atin dito ni Father
oo.
Ceciliano, usually yung mga frontrunner, hindi naman daw talaga sila
Oo.
yung na-elect, di ba, sa conclave.
Actually-
But there's only one exemption, which is the late Pope Benedict.
Oo,
Siya
Benedict,
yung noon pa na talagang, siya na yung susunod. And eventually, siya nga talaga
kasi you have to
susunod.
remember, si Pope John Paul II was one of the most beloved, yung mga bata, they don't know this, one of the most beloved popes in history because he came in at a time that the church was really on the way, in terms of popularity down, and he brought it back to the people. So when he died, people wanted to make sure na yung ginagawa ni John Paul, talagang hardcore na matutuloy. So Pope Benedict, which was his, what is he, head of state or yung Carmelengo or something like that ni Pope John Paul, immediately elected yan. From the start, he was a front runner. When Pope Benedict abdicated or he gave up his throne, ang pinag-uusapan nga dyan was still that black cardinal and si Tagle. Si Borgiola or si Pope Francis was not in the
Was
radar
not
at
in the
all.
radar.
Kaya when they announced him and he came out, talagang yung mga tao, wow, na-shock.
But going back nga dun sa sinasabi ko, they're going to be, nagkaroon na sila ng mga pre-discussions, tawag nga nila dito, pre-conclave. Pero as I've
College
said,
of Cardinals
Oo,
discussion.
pero ang sabi nga nila, diba, this is going to be the hardest conclave ever in the history kasi may mga hindi sila kakilala dito, they're just getting to know each other. But at the end of the day, sinasabi nila, they want to finish this as soon as possible. Diba? Kasi they don't want people to know, or especially yung mga tayo, diba, yung mga Catholic devotees, na divided ang church. Kasi pag pinatagal daw ang botohan sa conclave, it will assume daw, or makikita ng tao na parang divided pa rin yung Catholic Church.
Kasi sabi nga ng isang senior, before we go, senior Vatican analyst na hindi po pare, sabi niya, the reason why people are calling this maybe one of the hardest conclaves is because only because of the social media component. Because people are
Lahat
eyes
tayo
on,
biglang
updated. Pero
updated. Before, wala.
if
We
you
just watch yung conclave from TV.
actually, one of the
Diba?
hardest was even before yung Pope John Paul I, kay Pope Pius or Pope Paul, because supposedly meron mafia involved in this killing, di ba? So, let's see. On the 7th, the conclave begins, not the movie,
Yeah.
but the real conclave.
Ang ating kapatid na news anchor si Cheryl Cosem is there already with Mon Gualvez para sa coverage ng conclave doon
Alright.
sa Italy. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning. You're still watching News and Views here on One News.
Bilang Pilipino, bilang Pilipino.
Candidates are ramping up their campaigns a week before the 2025 midterm elections. Here's the report.
Tribal leaders welcome senatorial candidate Kiko Pangilinan in General Santos City. He vowed to include them in the solution to resolve food crisis. His party mate, another senatoriable Bam Aquino, campaigned around Metro Manila. He said he will continue to advocate for free education. Meanwhile, candidates from Alyansa para sa Bagong Pilipinas went to Batangas. The sortie was led by President Bongbong Marcos. His bets were endorsed by former Batangas Governor Vilma Santos Recto.
Salamat kayo.
While PDP of the Duterte's camp held a campaign rally in Butuan City. TV host Willie Revillame visited San Pablo City, Laguna. Revillame promised elderly residents there of free medicine should he win as senator. Senatoriables Vic Rodriguez and Rodante Marcoleta also wooed voters in the area. Meanwhile, independent bet Ariel Curabin held a motorcade in Cebu.
The Philippine National Police is now on full alert status for the midterm elections. The PNP said strict security measures are now in place across the country until May 15. All standby support and quick reaction forces have been instructed to remain on guard. Police units have also heightened their presence at polling centers and other critical areas. The PNP said they are also working closely with the COMELEC and other government agencies.
Now let's get some insights ahead of the midterm polls. Attorney Michael Yusinko, Senior Research Fellow at the Ateneo Policy Center, is now joining us again via Zoom. Hi, Attorney. Thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Angela and Angelo, at good morning sa lahat ng nanonood at nakikinig sa atin ngayon.
Yes, Attorney, what's your assessment dun sa ating nangyayaring campaign so far? May mga notable observation ka ba ngayon?
Well, unang-una, yung masakit aminin na yung tradpole style of politics is still, the main fare sa ating campaign, no? Pati yung mga crass gimmicks, yung mga bastos na pananalita, na mga style, nandyan pa rin.
Yes.
So, I think yun yung pinaka-notable na, para sa akin at least, no? Kasi, given the internet and social media and all the technological tools available to candidates now, ang nananaig pa rin is yung tradpole style, no? Yung pinapakita yung videos ngayon, yung mga rallies na parang concerts, no? Yung mga nagsasayaw, right? And then yung mga political ads na walang laman, kung hindi pa papatawa lang, o kaya drama na alam mo namang fake na fake. So, I think yun yung pinaka-disappointing, I would say, na observation na we are in the 21st century and all the tools available and yet ganun pa rin yung style ng politika natin.
Parang attorney, umaatras tayo, no? I'd like also take a look, attorney, in general, yung Philippine system of how we elect politicians. Ngayon, you will see a lot of, lack of a better term, weird. For example, you have VP Sara endorsing the sister of the president. And then you also have former Vice President Leni Robredo endorsing opponents niya supposedly sa presidential election and kay Abalos, no? So, in the US, the worst that could happen was you endorse somebody from the far right to the far left within your party. So, kunyari, Democrat far right, Democrat center, Democrat left. You don't see somebody from the Democrats endorsing somebody sa Republicans. It's unheard of, no? So, what do you think is happening, lalo ngayon, with all these endorsements left and right? Should we then, in the future, take a look at yung system natin?
So, the operative word there sa sinabi mo, Angelo, is party, political party, no? Sa ating bansa kasi, wala tayong mga totoong political parties, no? What we have are political dynasties, no?
Yeah.
Kung political parties kasi, merong structure yan, merong institutions involved, merong mga conventions involved na katulad ng sinabi mo, di ba, yung a Republican will not endorse a Democrat and vice versa because of convention, institutions, rules, and regulations within the party themselves.
At saka, attorney, dagdag natin, prinsipyo.
Yeah, exactly. Prinsipyo, programa, ideolohiya. Sa atin kasi ang nananaig, kumbaga yung political unit na nananaig sa bansa natin, yung political dynasties. Yan, sila walang prinsipyo, walang structure, walang convention, walang tradition, walang rules, no? Ang nananaig lang sa kanila is yung sarili nilang interest, no? Yung what they need to do to win and what they need to do to keep themselves in power. So yan yung paliwanag kung bakit meron sitwasyon na isang kandidato pareho siyang iniendorso ng administrasyon at oposisyon. No? So ganun yung explanation doon na kasi itong mga kandidato na tumatakbo, wala namang mga prinsipyo yan Wala namang hindi sila nakaangkla sa tradisyon, sa regulasyon, sa convention, sa prinsipyo, nakaangkla yan sa sariling interest nila. And therefore, yung mga ganong weird situations na sinasabi mo are possible. And in fact, they are happening, hindi lang ngayon, pati dati pa.
Before I move on to Angel, I'd like to ask, so do you think this election, this midterm, is still a referendum of the president or Duterte, or is just merely an election of kung kaninong gimmick ang mas maganda?
Alam mo, Angelo, that's a good question, pero ang hirap kasi sagutin na referendum Although that's the conventional thinking, no, na referendum dun sa incumbent president. Kaya lang, I wouldn't say na referendum kasi wala namang pinag-uusapan sa campaign about policies of the administration, no? Wala naman tayong naririnig na debate o diskurso tungkol dun sa mga ginagawa ng administrasyon. Yung opposition, yung Duterte, and even to a certain extent, yung mga Makabayan Bloc, etc., wala naman silang formidable critique to the administration's policies and decisions. Kumbaga, meron silang sarili-sariling gimmick nila, pero wala naman silang hinahain na kritisismo na malinaw to be able to say na yung election is a referendum of the administration.
Attorney, I believe in an election, hindi lang dapat ang kandidato ang naghahanda, but also the voters. No? Tayo mga botante, naghahanda rin tayo when it comes to the platforms, background, the ability to govern ng isang kandidato. Yung voters education, ika nga. No? But ang tanong dito, may nangyayari ba talagang voters education? Kasi meron akong nabasa minsan na article na para lang daw sa mga elitista yung nagpupush na mga voters education.
That's a valid criticism, Angela, no, na kasi ang voters education is conducted mainly by civil society organizations, and then ang sineservisan nilang mga kliyente o mga grupo din na hindi naman nakakaabot doon sa mga nangangailangan ng tulong, should we say, no? And also, yung voters education na ginagawa ninyo ng media, syempre, ang nakaka-access lang noon, yung may access sa internet, sa social media, sa TV, no? So, there's a certain credibility to that or validity to that criticism. Pero I think kasi, for me, what makes voter education not as effective as we want to is kasi ginagawa lang natin sila tuwing eleksyon Yeah. So parang too late in the day, no? Kasi nagkakaroon ng maraming impormasyon masyado yung botante, hindi na niya napoproseso ng tama. So voters education, or more accurately, civics education is what we need, no? Na dapat in between elections, pinag-aaralan din natin ano ba yung una-una, ano yung mga trabaho dapat ng mga public officials. Kasi that has a bearing dun sa mga policies
Yeah.
or doon sa trabaho na ginagawa nila o doon sa output na
Correct, yeah.
pinapalabas nila, no, bilang mga public officials. So the bulk of the work, the hard yards, as they say, no, of civics education should happen in between elections, not during the election period, no. So I think yun yung bakit hindi ganun ka-effective yung voters education, because nangyayari lang siya pagdating ng campaign. Eh.
Yeah, you're right. Pero alam mo, attorney, I've also got me thinking also, no, but how much is it the fault of voters education to naisisihin natin in terms of quality ng politicians natin? You have to remember also, elections is likened to a commercial activity or a commerce, diba? And if you look at each society's cultures, makikita mo yung behavior ng tao. Like the US, some people will not vote Democrats because they are anti-abortion. So given may issue-based na yan, sa Pilipino, kung ano yung nasa harapan niya, kunyari sa palengke, yun ang bibilin niya. Kahit ano pang education gawin mo sa kanya na mas maganda ang patatas galing sa Taiwan o kaya sa yung native, kung ano nasa harapan niyang pwede niyang bilhin, yun ang bibilin niya. Ganun din ang election sa atin. Kung ano yung nasa harapan niyang pwede niyang i-consume o ano yung interesting na makulay o ano yung nagbigay ng ayuda, yan ang iboboto niya. Diba? So, what are we supposed to do? Aside from sabihin natin, we have to fix the party system, what are we supposed to do then if voters' education will really not work sa lower levels?
It's just going to be a cycle eh.
It's going to be a cycle.
That's a very fair point, no? Kaya nga sinasabi ko kanina, what we need actually is civics education, no, na
Continuous.
no?
Oo.
Hindi lang yung pabugso-bugso lang or tuwing may election lang. And civics education na ang nakatutok talaga is ano ba talaga ang nangyayari sa gobyerno? Ano yung dapat mangyari? And more importantly, ano ba yung responsibilidad ng mga mamamayan? Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kasi sabi nga ni the late Senator Nene Pimentel, sabi niya, good governance is not the responsibility of the governors alone, but also of the governed. No? So, tayong mga mamamayan,
I agree.
it begins with us, sa totoo lang, no?
Yeah.
It begins with us because we make the choice, eh. We make the choice. Sino ba yung iboboto natin? Sino yung iluluklok natin? So, kailangan tayong mga mamamayan, nagkakaroon din tayo ng enhancement sa ating pag-iisip in terms of ano ba yung trabaho ng mga ano ba ang gobyerno, ano trabaho ng gobyerno, ano ba dapat yung gagawin ng gobyerno, and of course, ano ba responsibilidad natin.
Attorney, very quick question na lang. Fearless forecast mo sa midterm elections, meron ba mga gainers and mga losers ngayon na nakikita mo?
Ilan admin, ilan Duterte? Sa tingin mo, attorney?
Let me put it this way. I think it's going to be a status quo result. Ibig sabihin, same old lang yung maluluklok. And that is really a very bad defeat for us, no? For us na nangangarap ng magkaroon ng pagbabago sa bansa natin. So, I don't have specific numbers, pero sa tingin ko, based on surveys and also my observations sa kampanya, mukhang yung mga mananalo ay parehong uri lang. And therefore, wala rin tayong maaasahan na pagbabago sa next term o dito sa second half ng administration ni Pangulong Marcos.
Mag-antay na lang tayo ng presidential.
Alright, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras, Attorney Michael Yusinko of the Ateneo Policy Center. Thank you so much.
Maraming salamat din.
Now, on to the next news. Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia reiterated that she will not step down from her position despite the suspension order from the Office of the Ombudsman. Garcia also said she would not apologize, citing her belief that the decision made by Ombudsman Samuel Martires to suspend her was politically motivated. The Ombudsman had ordered a 6-month preventive suspension for the governor due to her alleged approval of a permit for a construction company despite the absence of an environmental clearance.
Who indeed owes who an apology? That's a question.
I am not stepping down. Ako tabagan, sundan na lang ang order. Oy, excuse me. musunod ko og order kung legal.
The Agriculture Department has postponed the full implementation of the 20 peso per kilo rice program in Kadiwa stores across Metro Manila to May 13. This comes after COMELEC imposed a 10-day ayuda ban from May 2 to May 12, during which only medical and burial assistance are allowed. The Agriculture Department says the move is to avoid any political controversy or accusations of politicizing the program.
It is best nga daw po na we do it after elections so as not also to, kahit DA po yung magli-lead through Kadiwa nga, is hindi po maging ma-politicize po yung pagbibigay natin ng ating P20 na bigas. Tayo naman po ay sumusunod din sa mga direktiba po ng election. Ayaw rin naman natin na mapulaan tayo o
National Food Authority has allocated 370,000 metric tons of rice for the program, which is targeted for nationwide rollout by 2026. The Agriculture Department believes the program is sustainable as it supports local rice farmers. It also clarified that despite the ayuda or government assistance ban, the sale of rice at 29 pesos per kilo will continue.
as long as our farmers keep producing, this is the support that we're offering nga. As long as our farmers are producing, as well as also the government is willing to subsidize a portion of it to be sold. Tuloy-tuloy lang po itong programa.
The Philippines recorded a suspected digital fraud rate of 13.4% in 2024, more than double the global average of 5.4%, according to global information solutions provider TransUnion. This marks the fifth consecutive year the country has exceeded the global fraud rate, placing second behind India, which posted a 19% rate. The report found that 74% of Filipinos had been targeted by scams, with 34% losing money. Average losses reached $768 or over 44,700 pesos. Online communities had the highest fraud rate at 19.2%, followed by retail at 13%, both exceeding global benchmarks. TransUnion warned that fraud tactics are evolving and urged stronger security systems.
Don't go away because we're not done yet. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching News and Views here on One News.
Lawyers for former President Rodrigo Duterte have cited findings from the Senate investigation led by Senator Amy Marcos to challenge the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. The defense referenced a December 2023 letter from President Bongbong Marcos to Vice President Sara Duterte confirming that the government would not cooperate with the ICC. The letter was presented at a March Senate hearing chaired by Senator Amy. The defense filed their challenge on May 1, asserting that the Philippines was no longer a state party to the Rome Statute when the ICC investigation was authorized.
Now let's get insights from ICC Assistant to Counsel Attorney Cristina Conti. Attorney, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, good morning.
Okay, Attorney, well, itong recent findings ng, yung challenge ng defense team ni former President Duterte citing the committee ni Senator Amy Marcos about the legality of the arrest of former President Duterte. What is your take on that?
Well, our take is that these findings in the Senate investigation are irregularities in the arrest. Yeah? So it was about how the arrest was effected, but essentially it does not go into the validity of the warrant of arrest or even the proceedings. Kaya kung makikita na isipin natin, parang may mali sa parapan, pero hindi nito mabubura na merong warrant of arrest, hindi nito mabubura na merong kaso. And so for us, this kind of jurisdictional challenge actually tries to, it tries to separate and obfuscate in a way the issues, although of course we understand that there is a difference between jurisdiction and the exercise of jurisdiction. But when we talk about jurisdiction, it really just has to come from the word of or the letter of the Rome Statute, and the Rome Statute says the ICC has jurisdiction when a country is a member state of the ICC and when and where the crimes have been committed. And clearly, we were a member of the ICC then. What the defense challenge talks about is actually the exercise of jurisdiction. You had jurisdiction, but you failed to exercise it. And so this is where we're going to have a little bit of disagreement. Because on our part, we stand that the preliminary examination opened in 2018 was an exercise of jurisdiction.
Okay.
For them, they said, no, you need an investigation open before you left the ICC.
All right. So I understand this is all they're part of the legal proceeding ng defense, ano? Pero the way you look at it, tingin mo, syempre, ano yung tingin mo dito na what else, 'di ba? Ano pang dapat gawin ng prosecution naman to counter this claim?
Well, for the prosecution, they just need to, actually, they're under fire in this challenge because the defense is saying that the prosecution had a year to open investigation. So in 2018, it opened a preliminary examination. This is motu proprio, meaning it's just the prosecutor. The defense says there's no judge yet that has looked into the case. The judges looked only into the case in 2021 when they opened the investigation. And so the defense says, well, it was just the office of the prosecutor looking at this. And so it was just one-sided, or yung term nga itself, motu proprio, only on the part of the prosecutor. And therefore, it should not be counted. But for us, of course, the prosecutor has to kind of explain why it would only open an investigation a few years after that. Because, actually, ang hirap din kasi may ganun bang requirement? Wala yun sa text of the Rome Statute. It's just an implication. But for us, we say that the office of the prosecutor, let's not forget that it's really part of the ICC. So it's unfair to call it, to refer to it as outside of the scope of the court when you call it that. The court could also pertain to the office of the prosecutor.
Attorney, hingi ko lang yung clarification kasi medyo hindi man kaming regular folk, we're not lawyers. Sabi nila kasi since the defense is citing we're talking about yung findings ni Senator Amy, bakit hindi rin nila tignan yung actual pronouncements ng former president during the hearings sa Congress where he said, sige, I will accept the jurisdiction. Let's get it over and done with. So para to be fair, bakit hindi daw i-cite din yun? Or at least, at the very least, prosecution should use that also daw.
Well, kung usapin ng prosecution, only the sitting president can talk about jurisdiction or acceptance of jurisdiction. So, kung ano mang sinabi ni Duterte, nung panahon na presidente siya, yun yung, kumbaga, kakagat.
Yeah.
Kung anong sinabi ni Marcos nung panahon ng presidente siya, yun yung kakagat.
Okay.
And so, in some way, the statements or policy statements as president were consistent. Duterte did not want to join the ICC. Bongbong actually did not want, but at one point said, maybe we'll allow them to investigate, but we will not cooperate or actively participate.
Okay.
So, in terms of jurisdiction, hindi talaga tinanggap ni Presidente Duterte. Pero, ibahin ko yung, kumbaga, system or treatment doon sa mga sinabi niya sa Senate investigation or investigations.
Yes.
Kasi parang, ilan yun, meron pa yung extrajudicial hearings, meron pa din sa Congress. Those statements could be taken as evidence. And later on during trial, we're expecting some of his statements to, well, bite him back in the ass. It will come back to him because these statements can be considered as evidence in the sense that ebidensya ito na sinabi mo.
Pero Attorney, I'd like to about yung sinasabi ni former President Duterte yung sa congressional hearings about admitting at some point to the killings tapos rini-retract niya. How would a lawyer take a look at this? No, inamin mo tapos rini-retract mo.
That would be an inconsistent statement, and that could actually be used to impeach. Sorry to use the term, but that's a legal term.
Okay.
To impeach a witness or to question his or her credibility. Very pun intended sa mga Duterte, impeached as a witness dito. Pero ang ibig sabihin tingnan mo, hindi mo alam kung ano ba talaga yung totoo, hindi ka consistent sa sinasabi mo, and therefore hindi ka namin paniniwalaan, whichever.
Okay.
Which is why it's pwedeng mong maisip two ways. Una, talagang ginugulo niya yung testimonya niya para hindi magamit o hindi siya mapaniwalaan. Or pangalawa, nagsasabi siya ng totoo. Tapos later on, kasi bawi Kumbaga, yung una lagi niyang sinasabi ay, kung ang term nga natin ay admission against interest. Pag-amin na kontra sa sarili mo. Pinatay ko yan. Pumatay ako ng 6 hanggang 7 katao. Kapag tinatanong, doon na siya babawi or aatras na siya. Actually, bakit ko bibigay ang pangalan? Actually, hindi pala. So yung second part na yon, pwedeng maituring na parang yung una totoo, yung pangalawa yun na yung pagsisinungaling niya. It would depend how you present it, because actually these statements might not be presented at all. Kumbaga iiwasan na ng prosecution. Di ko na nga lang ihaharap to kasi hindi naman ito maganda. O masasabi pa tayo dito, wag na lang. So, posibleng hindi na iwasan na yung paggamit nito. At yung ibang statements, yung marami pang ibang statements ang nandyan. And there's also a factor of, because the Senate investigation and the House hearings were under oath.
Yeah.
That's key, that's crucial. And so, could be taken as admissions against interest and public statements, publicly sworn statements. The other statements that the prosecutor, we think has, would be his statements to the media before. When he said, kill, 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 patatabain ko yung isda ng Manila Bay and so forth. Yung mga klaseng testimonya or statements pwedeng magamit whether sa media o sa Senate or sa House of Representatives.
But Attorney Conti, I want to take this opportunity na rin to ask you regarding the update doon sa naging usapin din before weeks ago doon sa pag-require ng defense ng ID or identification ng mga victims and witnesses. And I think there was a statement from the defense na hindi naman daw ganun yung that's not what they meant. It was you who interpreted it like that, na parang anti-poor yung mga hinihingi nila.
Yeah, and then they called us liars.
Yeah.
Well, there is a misappreciation, I think, on their part, because we did not, yung specific term why we were called liars, because I think in a news report, the ICC rejected. I don't know what term they want to use, but what happened was, there's a section in the ICC. It's called the Victims Participation and Reparation section. And again, these are not victim witnesses that they're qualifying, but participating witnesses. So ito yung magsasabi na pananaw, kuro-kuro, pag-aalala. Sa ICC, hindi sila kailangan pumunta sa court. Pero pwede silang mag-participate. Anong ID ang pwedeng i-present? Si VPRS, ang sabi, ito, all government-issued identification documents. May kasama kasi na voter certification kasi wala nang voter's ID ngayon, di ba? So, voter certification. So, pinasok nila yon. Sabi din nila, pwede ding barangay certificate. Hindi yun ID. Technically, di ba? It's not an ID card, but it's a document. Pwede rin yan. So, 30 pieces or 30 kinds of government identity documents. They said, let's use this. The defense said, well, observation nila, well, we would, mas okay sa amin kung passport and national ID. In default, maybe one of the documents used in the SSS. The ICC, pre-trial chamber, yung judges sabi nila, ganun ba? O sige, given your observations, however you call it, given your observations, the application of the VPRS and the observation of the defense, we will follow the VPRS proposal. And so this is where the concept of quote-unquote rejection comes from. And what's clear is the ICC did not accept or did not take into consideration even the observations of the defense. So it's a matter of semantics, but I would say that the media in some way fairly used the term rejected because the ICC did not follow. And I've said this before. What the defense could have done was just simply defer. Sabi lang nila, we leave it to the discretion of the court to determine which IDs are amenable. Or they could have simply said, we accept any government issued identification card, which was the proposal in the first place. So, ang hirap, there's semantics, but what's clear is the defense wanted to limit, or their suggestion was, let's limit the IDs required. And so, to be specific about it, there were some documents that will not have been accepted if we followed the defense proposal. In the end, balik tayo sa 30. So there's 30 kinds of IDs na government issued na pwede ngayong iharap ng mga victims na magpa-participate sa ICC. We're expecting sometime this month for the call for participating victims to ready.
At least we're clear on that. On that note, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras. Of course, sa inyong insights na rin, ICC Assistant to Counsel, Attorney Cristina Conti. Thank you so much.
Maraming salamat. Ingat.
Alright, in other news, Pag-asa continues to monitor a low-pressure area near Palawan. It was last spotted some 460 kilometers west of Coron. Its chance of developing into a tropical depression remains slim. Still, some areas may experience rains due to the trough of the LPA. These include Mimaropa, Bicol, Batangas, and Quezon. Metro Manila and the rest of the country may also experience rains due to the easterlies. Some areas, though, may continue to experience high heat index. These include Infanta Quezon, where heat index could go as high as 45 degrees Celsius.
Now in sports, the NU Lady Bulldogs and the DLSU Lady Spikers are heading to the UAAP Season 87 Women's Volleyball Finals. NU outlasted the FEU Lady Tamaraos in a gripping 5-setter 20-25, 22-25, 25-23, 25-14, and 17-15. The LSU secured their final slot after a 4-set victory over the UST Golden Tigresses 25-22, 11-25, 25-21, and 25-21. In the men's division, top-ranked FEU booked the first finals ticket with a 24-26, 25-23, 25-19, and 25-20 victory over LaSalle. Number 3 seed UST and 4-time defending champion NU will face off in a do-or-die match on Wednesday to determine who will complete the finals cast.
An 8-year-old boy from Baras, Rizal has already published 3 books, proving that age is no obstacle when it comes to pursuing dreams. Mobile Journal Jazz Paredes has the story.
Hindi lang isa o dalawa, kundi 3 libro ang naisulat ng batang nakilala natin mula Baras Rizal. At sa edad na 8 taong gulang lamang, ay opisyal niya na ring na-publish ang mga ito. O ha? Ang galing, di ba?
Martial artist, achiever, at new book author sa 3 libro.
Lahat yan achieve ni John Timothy Asido o Janoy sa edad lamang na 8 years old.
Ito po ang libro kong Pugay ang Batang Mahusay. Ito naman po ang Johnny the Explorer. Ito naman po yung Johnny the Explorer 2nd edition.
Ang kanyang mga libro daw ay hango sa kanyang sariling karanasan. Kwento ni Mommy Jonah, 5 years old pa lamang daw si Janoy ay nagsimula na siya mag-draft ng kanyang mga sariling kwento. Si Janoy din daw ang nagbigay ng idea para sa unang libro na isinulat ni Mommy Jonah.
Siya po yung nagbigay ng idea kung paano ko bubuuin, kung paano gagawin. Tapos siya na rin yung nagdo-drawing ng mga characters, kung sino yung magiging tauhan doon sa kwento. Kaya nakita namin nung 5 years old siya na merong potential na pagdating sa pagsusulat yung aming anak.
Sa tulong ng kanyang mga magulang na manunulat rin, naging registered author si Janoy at na-publish ang kanyang mga libro noong December 2024 at nito lamang Marso. Pero, sa likod ng kahangahang pinakikita ni Janoy, may mas malalim na dahilan daw kung bakit simulan niya ang pagsusulat. Ito ang kanyang outlet matapos ma-diagnose ng pambihirang sakit.
Siya po ay isang sikaran player at arnis player. So, since 6 years old po siya, at last year po, doon po na-diagnose po siya ng chronic iron deficiency anemia with allergic vasculitis. So, ipinatigil po, pinahinto po ng doktor yung lahat po ng activities niya. Hindi po yun pwede doon sa kondisyon ng bata. So, andun na yung frustration ng bata na na-stop yung routine niya. Binilan ko siya ng pang-painting, binilan namin siya ng mga gamit na pang-instrument para maituon doon yung kanyang attention. Napunta siya sa writing.
Pero hindi raw magiging hadlang ang kanyang karamdaman sa mga gusto niya pang gawin. Sa katunayan, marami na raw siyang nakapilang drafts para sa bagong libro na kanyang isinusulat. At ang kanyang pangarap?
Pangarap ko pag yung may sarili po akong restaurant na may mga librong nakadisplay.
May mensahe naman si Janoy para sa kanyang mga kapwa-bata.
Sa mga bata pong katulad ko, wag po kayo mawalan ng pag-asa sa mga pagsubok na papagdaanan nyo po at laban lang.
Mobile Journal Just Paredes po, hatid ang mukha ng balita.
Galing niya, na ano ako sa
3 books, 8 years old. Ano ba ginagawa natin ng 8 years old tayo?
Sabi niya, laban lang. I agree with him. Alright, and that wraps up today's episode of News and Views.
Join us again tomorrow. I'm Angela Lagunsad Castro.
And I'm Angelo Castro III. We are one you.
All sides, all the time.